terrifically good-looking productions to cover up a very, 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 very thin script. Okay, next movie. And our next movie is called Heavy Petting. This is quite a change of subject, among other things. It's a compilation of old and new footage on the subject of teenage sex, especially in the 1950s and early 1960s, when, according to the testimony in this movie, teenagers knew a lot about sex and almost everything they knew was wrong. The movie brings together several different kinds of material. First, there are old educational films in which lecturers solemnly discuss the ins and outs of human sexuality.
Well, I may be old-fashioned, but I've always been taught that sex relations should be saved for marriage. If I did give in to Keith, I don't think he'd ever respect me again.
Then there are the interviews with a lot of survivors of teenage sex, people now in their 30s and 40s who remember the old days. A lot of these witnesses are performers like actress Ann Magnuson, who talks about how people never talked about sex.
Every time she said penis, we'd break up into squeals of laughter. And she got really mad at us because we would never pay attention. We were like, yeah, okay, let's go watch Bullwinkle, you know.
The movie includes historical documentary gems like this rediscovered footage of the dramatic search for a VD carrier.
Starting with a known hangout, the ballpark. With only a vague description of a girl, the field representative tries to find one of the known contacts of an infected person. And here, as with all other cases in Oakdale, he is successful in locating a potential source of syphilis. The tall, aggressive blonde.
A sequence like that contains an amazement all its own as the camera zooms in on that suspicious-looking blonde. But Heavy Petting has a couple of problems, I think. One is that the structure of the movie quickly gets really routine. First we get old footage, then we get new footage, then we get a clip from a Hollywood teenager movie, then the process begins all over again with some more witnesses telling about their adolescence. The second problem in this movie is that none of the so-called experts in the film really seem to have fought it out in the trenches of teenage sexuality. A lot of them seem to have grown up in big cities, for example, where they missed the whole car culture. This movie really totally misses the boat on the whole culture of parking and lovers' lanes and things. I kept having the feeling that any randomly selected group of my friends would have more interesting memories about adolescence than the people in this film. They were losers in the teenage romantic sweepstakes, but then again, who wasn't? The problem is they can't even make good stories out of their defeats.
I thought this was a very weak film, given the potential for being funny or insightful. And why not be insightful? The easiest thing to do is to look at old VD films or Army training films about that and just run that material. So I don't give them any credit for that. It's not a fresh insight to look at that stuff as campy. But then they have interviews with people, and they pick a lot of fringe show business people, sort of cult figures who are sort of standard order whenever you want to be sort of a little bit avant-garde, but now they're really not. They're mainstream because they're used so often in the same way. I thought it was completely uninspired. I think they blew it. I wasn't laughing at the stuff. And I would have probably preferred to have seen one uninterrupted Army training film or something like that, rather than what they put together through editing.
You know, one of the things I couldn't help thinking about as I watched this movie is that several people talk about that legendary girl in the senior class. You know, there's every time that anybody talks about teenage sex in the 50s, they always say, and 3 or 4 people in this movie say, I think everyone in our senior class was a virgin when we graduated. We never had any sex except for this one girl who was said to, you know, go all the way. I would like it if they would find that girl.
Exactly.
You know, I would really like to find the legendary girl from the 50s who went all the way. I don't know if she exists. I mean, there was supposed to be one in our senior class, but the identity kept changing, and by the time our 10th anniversary came around, we figured that that was just a bad rumor.
But what you're talking about is something of substance.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing, obviously, with an important subject. Let's get some confessions, not people doing a showbiz act or standard camp material. Coming up next...